The sky saw him. Canada's 14-day Amber Alert INTRO in the summer of 2014. A small mapping plane flew over the outskirts of Calgary, Canada. Under its belly was an aerial camera worth more than $1 million, capable of capturing the ground in extreme detail. The people on board were not looking for a crime scene. They were not part of a police investigation. They were just doing a mapping job. But later, those images would become one of the most important pieces of evidence in a case that had already shaken an entire city. A 5-year-old boy named Nathan O'Brien had vanished from his grandparents' home. His grandparents, Alvin and Catherine Lickneys, were missing too. The house showed signs of violence. The city was under an Amber Alert. Police, volunteers, and family members searched for days, holding on to one fragile hope. Maybe Nathan was still alive. Then investigators found a green pickup truck. Then they found a farm. And finally, they found proof from the sky. This is the condensed story of the Calgary case that became one of Canada's longest Amber Alerts. Level 1. The sleepover. Nathan was 5 years old. He loved superheroes. He loved hockey. Like so many kids in Calgary, he loved the Calgary Flames. On June 29, 2014, his family spent the day helping his grandparents with a garage sale. Alvin and Catherine were preparing to move. They had sold their Calgary home and were planning a quieter retirement, split between Alberta and Mexico. The day was busy, loud, and ordinary. Neighbors came and went. Old furniture, tools, and household items were carried out into the driveway. Nathan loved being part of it. He talked to people, helped where he could, and wore himself out by the end of the day. That night, Nathan fell asleep at his grandparents' house. His mother Jennifer originally planned to stay too, but Nathan's younger brother woke up crying. To avoid disturbing everyone, Jennifer took the younger child home and left Nathan asleep with his grandparents. It was a small family decision, the kind nobody remembers until something terrible happens. A few hours later, while the house was quiet, someone came in. Level 2. The house with an O answers. The next morning, Jennifer returned to pick up Nathan. The front door was not right. Inside, the house was in chaos. Furniture was overturned. The television was knocked down. There were signs of a violent struggle. But Nathan was not there. Alvin was not there. Catherine was not there. Jennifer searched the rooms in panic, calling for her parents and her son. There was no answer. Police arrived and sealed the home. Investigators found blood in several areas of the house and signs that someone had been dragged. DNA later confirmed the blood came from all 3 missing people. But the amount of blood did not prove they were dead. That meant there was still a chance. Terrible chance, but a chance. Because Nathan was a child, police issued an Amber Alert across Calgary. An Amber Alert is not used casually. It is reserved for cases where a child is missing and may be in immediate danger. Phones, radios, television stations, and highway signs can all be used to spread the warning. Most Amber Alerts last hours. Some last a day or two. This one would last 14 days. Level 3. The city searches. Calgary reacted immediately. Police interviewed neighbors. They traced everyone who had visited the garage sale. They collected fingerprints from hundreds of people. They searched parks, rivers, roadsides, landfills, and neighborhoods. More than 300 officers and nearly 1,000 volunteers joined the effort. For the family, every hour was torture. There was no ransom call, no message, no explanation. Nathan's parents spoke to the media, pleading for whoever had him to bring him home. His mother spoke directly to her son through the cameras, telling him that Mommy and Daddy loved him more than anything. The city watched and waited. Then investigators found the first real clue. In the early hours after the disappearance, a green Ford F-150 pickup truck had been captured by multiple surveillance cameras near the Lickneys' home. It was an old truck from the late 1980s, and its color made it stand out. A witness saw someone leave the truck and walk toward the house. About 90 minutes later, the person returned. When the truck arrived, the bed looked empty. When it left, something appeared to be covered under a pale tarp. Police released images of the truck to the public. Calls came flooding in. One tip changed everything. Level 4. The green truck. The tip came through family connections. Someone recognized a truck like that on a farm near Airdrie, north of Calgary. The truck was linked to a man named Douglas Garland. Garland was not a random stranger. He had a connection to Alvin Lickneys through an old business relationship. Years earlier, Alvin had worked in oil and gas technology and had been involved in developing a specialized pump. Garland believed he deserved credit, money, and recognition for work connected to that invention. Alvin disagreed. To Alvin, Garland had helped with a modification, not invented the device. Garland felt cheated. That resentment did not fade. For years, according to people who knew him, Garland kept talking about the dispute. It became part of his identity. He was a man who believed something had been taken from him. And now Alvin was preparing to move away. Police learned that only a few matching trucks existed in the province. Most were quickly ruled out. Garland's truck was the one they could not ignore. Level 5. The farm. The next morning, police went to Garland's family farm. A helicopter spotted the green pickup truck from above. Because investigators still hoped Nathan and his grandparents might be alive, officers moved quickly. They searched areas where a living person might be hidden. Garland was there with his elderly parents. He appeared calm, but officers noticed marks and injuries on his face. They also noticed things that made the farm deeply suspicious. A burning barrel, scattered ash, a canvas bag, restraints, and tools that did not fit an innocent explanation. At first, police did not have enough to search every inch. But they had enough to keep watching. Garland was arrested on an unrelated identity theft matter, giving police time to continue the investigation. Meanwhile, the search expanded. A trained cadaver dog was brought to the farm. The dog alerted in multiple areas, including near a fire pit, a burn barrel, and a space between a greenhouse and another building. Investigators began collecting ash, fragments, objects, and anything that might tell them where Nathan, Alvin, and Catherine had gone. The hope that they were alive was becoming harder to hold. Level 6. The trap. Garland was later released on bail in the unrelated case, but police did not really let him go. They watched him. They believed he might return to the farm, especially if he thought evidence was still there. On July 13th, Garland rented a vehicle and went shopping. He bought gloves, a towel, and a flashlight. Investigators followed him carefully. After midnight, he began driving toward the farm. His route was strange, as if he was trying to detect surveillance. But police were ready. He stopped near a rural road, got out, and moved through thick brush toward the property. Before he could reach the farm, officers arrested him again. A helicopter with night vision equipment circled above, recording the arrest. That same day, Calgary police announced the unbearable conclusion. Based on the evidence, they believed Nathan, Alvin, and Catherine were dead. The Amber Alert ended after 14 days. For the public, it was devastating. For the family, it was the moment hope was taken away. Level 7. The motive. The case was not about robbery. Valuables had been left behind. There was no ransom demand. The motive appeared to be old resentment. Garland had once been intelligent and capable. He had been accepted into medical school, but was expelled after cheating. Later, he built a criminal history involving weapons allegations, identity theft, fraud, and a previous drug lab case. He had lived under a stolen identity for years before being caught. But with Alvin, the wound seemed personal. Garland believed he had been denied recognition for the oilfield pump project. When Alvin and Catherine were preparing to leave Calgary and begin a new chapter, Garland may have felt that his last chance for revenge was disappearing. Investigators later found evidence that Garland had studied locks, surveillance, forensic topics, DNA, and the Lickneys family business. It looked less like a sudden act and more like an obsession that had been growing in the dark. The crime horrified Calgary because it felt impossible to understand. A child had been caught in the middle of an adult grudge that had nothing to do with him. Level 8. The sky photograph. The most unusual evidence came from a place nobody expected. On July 1st and July 2nd, just after the disappearance, an aerial mapping company flew over the Airdrie area. The plane carried a high-resolution camera powerful enough to capture tiny details on the ground. By chance, it flew over Garland's farm. Later, investigators reviewed the images. The photos were not released publicly in detail, but in court, prosecutors said the aerial images showed critical activity at the farm. They supported the timeline and helped connect the farm to what happened after the disappearance. For the family, those images were heartbreaking. For the jury, they were powerful. They showed that even when a person believes no one is watching, the world can still record the truth. Police also collected a massive amount of physical evidence. Burned fragments, personal items, DNA, footwear evidence, tools, and material from the farm. The investigation became one of the largest evidence-gathering efforts in Calgary history. Garland never confessed. He never explained. He never gave the family the answers they deserved. But the evidence spoke for him. The verdict and the legacy. In 2017, Douglas Garland was found guilty of 3 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 3 life sentences with no chance of parole for 75 years. The case was over in court, but it was not over for Nathan's family. Nathan's brother still had to grow up with a question no child should have to ask. Why is my little brother never coming home? Across Calgary, people lit candles and released green balloons in Nathan's memory. The grief was public, but the deepest pain belonged to the family. Nathan's parents later helped create a foundation in his name to support children and families who had suffered loss. The Calgary Flames, the hockey team Nathan loved, held a charity event in his memory. There is one image his mother returned to again and again. Nathan smiling in his grandmother's arms. For her, it meant he was not alone. That is the part of this story worth holding on to. Not the killer, not the farm, not the darkness, but a little boy who loved superheroes, hockey, and his family, and the people who refused to let him disappear without truth.